Welcome to today's live reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Mysteries of Creation. We are going to begin chapter 1 of this canto, the first step in God realization. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. After praising Parikshit's questions, Shukadev begins by describing what one should not do as he approaches death. And then he describes what should be done, emphasizing that one must continuously hear and chant about Krishna. He tells Parikshit that he will recite to him the Srimad Bhagavatam, which he heard from his father, Vyasadeva. Aware that many of the sages present do not have faith in Krishna, the king asks what such persons should do, and Shukadev explains the process of Virat Roop meditation. Shukadev closed his eyes and folded his hands in prayer. O Lord Vasudev, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer respectful obeisance unto you. Chapter 1, verse 1. Opening his eyes, his charming face broke into a radiant smile. This is a glorious question, my dear king, beneficial to all. Its answer is the most important subject matter for us to hear about. Turning to the others, he said, I think we will all agree on this. The assembled sages called out in concurrence. Chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. Shukadev again addressed Parikshit. I will first explain what a person on the verge of death should avoid. Certainly, we should not foolishly waste time discussing useless subjects and fail to ask life's important questions such as, who am I? What's life purpose? And how can I solve the problems of material existence? One who desires his own good should not squander his nights in sleeping and sex, and his days only in accruing wealth and maintaining family members. Nor should one remain attached to his body and relatives, thinking they can protect him from the danger. One must be always conscious that in due course the material body will be destroyed. Murmurs of agreement came from the sages. Parikshit felt comforted that he had avoided these most common pitfalls to spiritual enlightenment. Even whilst discharging his kingly duties, he had always dedicated ample time to discussing spiritual truths and worshipping the Lord. Chapter 1, verse 5, Shukadev continued, O great king, hear now what one who desires freedom from all suffering, including the ultimate misery of death, must do. The whole assembly became hushed, curious to know what the widely respected Shukadev would recommend. In a grave voice, Shukadev said, one must continuously hear about, glorify and remember Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Savior from all suffering. Parikshit felt an immediate sense of relief. Shukadev's voice resonated with his own deepest convictions. However, he was unsure how the sages felt, remembering how they had advocated good works, cultivation of knowledge, and mystic meditation. Chapter 1, verse 6. As if reading his mind, Shukadev said, know for certain that Krishna is the absolute truth, the highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic yoga, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember him at death. I'll repeat, it's very important. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic yoga, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember him at death. Why is there so much controversy on this point? Asked Parikshit. Only those affected by spiritually realized transcendentalists delight in discussing the Lord's glories. Shukadev chuckled, remembering how he initially heard about Krishna. Chapter 1, verse 8. I first savored such discussion by my father Vyasadev's mercy. He taught me the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is filled with descriptions of Krishna and is therefore equal to Lord himself. Parikshit became doubtful. Holy One, I have heard you were already Brahman. Brahman realized when while in your mother's womb. What need was there for you to engage in any spiritual practice? Chapter 1, verses 9 to 10. Without any pride, Shukadev replied, "What you have heard is true. I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence. Still, I was attracted by the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes Krishna's pastimes. I am the proof that these narrations are more enjoyable than Brahman realization. I shall now recite to you the same enlightened teachings that I heard, for you are the Lord's sincere and dedicated servant." Anyone giving full attention and respect to this great literature will achieve unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. Excuse me. Parikshit said, "What is the Srimad Bhagavatam's key message?" Chapter 1 of Canto 2, verse 11. This is very important, so please hear it attentively. Not that the rest is not important, but this is how it begins. It explains how we can awaken our attachment for Krishna. The three most important ways to achieve this are to hear about, glorify, and remember him. Of these, the Srimad Bhagavatam stresses glorification of Krishna, specifically by chanting his holy name. This can purify everyone. Shukadev explained that the greatest spiritual authorities in all religious traditions recommend continuously reciting the Lord's divine names, which are non-different from him. His names are so merciful that even people who reject his personal form and pastimes are willing to chant them. However, not everyone's chanting bears the same fruit. Whatever one desires, the holy name will award, whether it be heaven, liberation, or Krishna's loving service. So this is very important, that whatever we desire, Krishna is going to provide us. So while chanting God's name, whatever your desires are will be awarded by the Lord. So if you desire heaven, Lord will give you the heaven. If you desire liberation while chanting holy names, you will be given liberation. And if you want Krishna's loving service, Krishna will give you that as well. "My time is short," said Parikshit. "What should I do? Should I hear Srimad Bhagavatam or chant the holy name?" Now from chapter 1, verse 12. "My dear king, first of all, do not worry about time. It is better to have a short duration of life if one knows his supreme interest, rather than to live for many years in ignorance." Chapter 1, verse 13. Shukadev gave the example of King Khatavang. King Khatavang, who had gone to the celestial realms to fight the demons on behalf of the gods. After the gods attained victory, they asked Khatavang what benediction he desired. As a righteous king, fully conscious of life's prime duty, he inquired how much longer he had to live. The gods told him he had only a moment in terms of celestial time. So those of you who don't know, King Khatavang only had one moment in terms of celestial time. Although longer than a moment of earthly time, it was still a short duration. Thus the king immediately returned to earth, where he surrendered to Krishna by the process of bhakti yoga. Chapter 1, verse 14. In answer to your question, O king, in the 7 days left of your life, you have time to both hear Srimad Bhagavatam and chant the holy name. Hearing will intensify your desire to attain Krishna's loving service, and then your chanting will bear the highest fruit. These two practices are all you require to achieve complete perfection. Parikshit remembered his childhood teacher Kripacharya telling him that whoever meditates on Krishna without deviation at the time of death is sure to attain him. This was surely life's greatest achievement and the final end of all misery. Looking with concern at the sages and knowing that many of them had little or no faith in Krishna, he wondered how they could transcend suffering as was their desire. Chapter 1, verse 15. Shukadev noted the king's worried glance and said, regardless of whether or not one accepts Krishna's supreme position to become free of suffering, including the fear of death, one must first become detached from material enjoyment. This is only possible for those who have successfully severed all attachment to their bodies and everything related to them, including their family members. That is why after 50 years of age, it is recommended that one leave home. There were murmurs of appreciation from the sages, most of whom had renounced family life. Chapter 1, verse 16, Shukadev continued, persons not interested in hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all about Krishna's glories, should go to a solitary sacred place and engage in Ashtanga Yoga. The first two stages of Ashtanga Yoga are Yama and Niyam. Yama means practicing self-restraint, which includes celibacy and fasting. Niyama means adopting practices which are helpful for spiritual advancement, such as bathing thrice a day in sacred rivers and practicing contentment and introspection. Chapter 1, verse 17. Then one should practice asana or sitting on sacred kusha grass covered by deer skin and cloth. After this comes pranayam, which means controlling the breath and chanting Om. Whenever the mind wanders away from the chanting, the yogi must bring it back to hearing the sacred syllable. This helps one rise to the first stage of transcendence, Brahman realization. Chapter 1, verses 18 to 19. By the above methods, the mind becomes progressively spiritualized and it will be possible to practice pratyahar, that is detachment from the sense objects. Then with the help of his intelligence, the yogi should systematically fix his mind on each of Vishnu's limbs, keeping it from straying to anything else. This is dharana. When concentration on Vishnu becomes uninterrupted, it is meditation or dhyana. By such contemplation, the yogi ceases to identify with the material body and mind and experiences his spiritual nature. This last stage of Ashtanga is called Samadhi. Chapter 1, verse 20. Shukadev explained that the mind is always troubled by passion and ignorance, which respectively cause distraction and confusion. By practicing dharana, the influence of these two material modes will stop. The yogi will then become peaceful and develop clear spiritual vision. Chapter 1, verse 21. He added, those yogis who meditate on Vishnu during the stage of dharana very quickly progress to the transcendental platform and serve him in full devotion. Chapter 1, verse 22. Parikshit said, I feel fortunate that from the beginning of my life I was attracted to Krishna. However, I am confused how a yogi who believes spirit is formless and all-pervading can practice dharana as you recommend. Please explain in detail how such a mystic should concentrate on the Lord and thus become purified of all mental contamination. Chapter 1, verses 23 to 25, Shukadev replied, after perfecting asana, pranayam and pratyahar, such a yogi should engage in dharana by fixing his mind on the Lord's Virat Roop or the universal form. The Virat Roop is the entire phenomenal universe comprising all things past, present and future. This was the form Krishna showed your grandfather Arjun at Kurukshetra. Parikshit looked confused. Was the universe God's form? Shukadev explained. Just as the individual souls inhabit their material bodies, the Lord inhabits the cosmos covered by 7 layers of elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, false ego and Mahat Tattva. Parikshit remained doubtful. How could one become purified by meditating on the material universe? Understanding his mind, Shukadev said, the cosmos is the Lord's energy. Since he is absolute, his energies are not different from him. Thus, even meditating on his impersonal cosmic feature, imagining it to be him, it can help the conditioned soul to indirectly associate with the Lord. This will gradually free him from the impurities in the heart which impede realization of Krishna's spiritual form. Parikshit's eyes filled with tears as he thought of Krishna's compassion on the fallen souls. He even helps those who deny him. Desiring the good of all such persons present, Parikshit asked Shukadev to give detailed instructions how to meditate on Virat Roop. Now finally, the 26th verse from chapter 1 today. Shukadev replied, self-realized souls say that the planets known as Patal constitute the soles of the universal Lord's feet, and his heels and toes are the Rasatal planets. His ankles are the Mahatal planets, and his shanks comprise the Talatal planets. So thank you for joining, and we will continue from here onwards tomorrow or next time. I wish you all a very blessed week ahead. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.